now?
Lucy.
Lucy, what does Lucy stand for?
It stands for my late wife. Since she died 30 years ago, I've been cultivating her cells. Each nucleus has the information to make an exact duplicate of her. Would you like to see her?
Peter O'Toole tries to recreate his long-dead wife with the help of graduate student Vincent Spano in Creator, one of the 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on At the Movies, the movie review program. I'm Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. In addition to Creator, we'll also be reviewing Weatherby with Vanessa Redgrave as a lonely British schoolteacher who receives a shocking visit from a stranger. And Key Exchange, about love and lust among New York yuppies. First, Gene starts with a sequel that took 30 years to make, Godzilla 1985.
And I was really looking forward to this one. I thought, oh, what great timing, bringing back Godzilla, that radioactive dinosaur who was so much goofy fun when he stomped on people and buildings. I love the sound it makes when he stomps. Boom, and it's a big, big sound. A whole city is falling over with every step. He also was a reminder, of course, of the horrors of nuclear war. That's how he was created. Well, so much for those great high expectations because, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Godzilla 1985 is dull. And it's only funny when it's completely inept, which sadly is only part of the time because most of the time it's just dull, as when the old Godzilla fighter himself, Raymond Burr, is summoned to fight the monster again.
Colonel, tell the Japanese we'll give them all the support they need. No, there has to be a more effective way. Troops, aircraft, rockets, they were all used before. All they'll do is confuse and antagonize him further. He's looking for something, searching. If only we could figure out what it is before it's too late.
Well, I was looking for something, too, something with a little bit of fun. That isn't funny. He's just standing there like a stiff. I mean, this is not a mummy picture, you know? Get into it. Have some fun. I think I know what Godzilla 1985 could use. And that shot of Godzilla in the water, I mean, kids with GoBots in their bathtub can have more fun than that. What this film could use is a soundtrack supplied by Woody Allen, just like his classic redubbing job of What's Up, Tiger Lily. Because played straight, Godzilla 1985 is a crushing bore.
You're right, you're right. I was waiting for something to happen. I went in with a, you know, kind of, I'm waiting for something, for a little bit of camp. I'm going to laugh, I'm going to have fun. And how bad it is. They tried to make it bad, like the dubbing was deliberately
in the
bad.
beginning,
yes. The lip sync is off, and that's an in-joke.
In the beginning.
But by the end of the movie, I'm thinking, Raymond Burr, he must have shot everything in 2 hours. He sits there in that sport coat, shirt with no tie, and he just has one line after another. That will never stop Godzilla. It will take more than that to stop Godzilla. Ah, gentlemen, you don't know Godzilla. And then they just edit these comments in at random. I mean, it's really pathetic.
You know what film this made me respect because this one stinks so badly? The remake of King Kong. Because the remake of King Kong was fun, it was exciting, had a good performance, Jeff Bridges, Jessica Lange, big money, Kong looked exciting. Here, this is trash.
This movie is so bad it made me respect Inframan and Invasion of the Bee-Girls. One thing I just want to observe that maybe you noticed too, the infinite variability in Godzilla's size.
Oh, yes.
At one point, he's small enough to look in a window of a ship's bridge. At another point, he's tall enough to knock over a 60-floor building. There is no consistency in scale. He can be any height that he wants to be, and yet his feet, when you see a guy, you see him, he's 60 feet tall, or 60 stories tall, then you see his feet, and they're only just as big as a foot would be, or a human foot.
I think what you're trying to say is this movie
I don't know what I'm trying to say, except this movie stunk. That's what I'm trying to say. Next is the movies. Peter O'Toole is a brilliant scientist who believes he can create life in a test tube.
The university, I try to please the federal government. Here?
Named Creator, and it stars Peter O'Toole as another one of those brilliant eccentrics he plays so well. After his weird characters in The Stuntman and My Favorite Year, here he is again as a Nobel Prize-winning scientist whose wife has been dead for 30 years, but he's kept some of her cells alive in his laboratory, and his secret obsession is that someday he'll be able to clone her and have her back again. To further that project, he needs help, lots of help, so he tries to grab every research assistant he can. And in this scene, he goes after Vincent Spano, who only wants to sign up for the usual courses.
Dr. Walper, I have to take at least 12 credits this
Harry, you worry far too much. Watch. Introduction to the big picture. 12 credits.
That's it? One course in the big picture, 12 credits.
It's very big. 12 credits probably isn't enough. It's so big.
Well, I think I'll go back down to registration.
There are no exams. Grades are based on interest and participation.
It's okay with me. I like exams.
My assistantships pay $3,500.
So do everybody else's.
Also, I know the name of the girl you followed into the lab.
Later in the film, O'Toole finds a girl he likes, played by Mariel Hemingway. Maybe she can help in his secret cloning project.
2 weeks ago, my boyfriend took off. And I think maybe he got me pregnant. But I'll be damned if I'm gonna go to one of those lousy 6-at-a-time welfare clinics. Get another stupid lecture from some fat nurse on my reproductive system. And I don't have enough money to see a private doctor to find out if I'm pregnant. Even if I had a private doctor. Which I don't. So there. Now you know.
Maybe I could help.
Yeah, maybe he can help her out because he has some weird idea that he can put together her pregnancy with his test tubes and develop a clone of his late wife. Well, eventually Hemingway develops a crush on O'Toole, and meanwhile, there's a whole subplot involving Virginia Madsen, who is the girlfriend of Vincent Spano, that young lab assistant in the first scene. She goes into a coma, and then O'Toole's archenemy, played by David Ogden Stiers, he's Major Winchester on MASH, wants to pull the plug on her life support system, so it's up to O'Toole to discover if he really can draw the line between life and death. Crater has some good performances in it and some good laughs and a few really heartwarming moments. I liked it almost enough to recommend it, but not quite. It's got charm, but it tries to cover so much ground that it finally just turns into a juggling act with the plot. It's a close miss.
I liked it maybe just a little bit less than you did. The thing that I liked the most, O'Toole. He's wonderful in this part. Of course, he can do this sort of thing, and I'd watch him all day long. But you're right, there's so much thrown in here. First of all, the David Ogden Stiers character might as well have a twirly mustache. He's such an evil character. He's way out of sync with this film, which is trying to say something about life and death, and this is, he's just too extreme. The teenage romance subplot, Vincent Spano, Virginia Madsen, unneeded, actually, if you think about it. Not necessary. It seems like it's thrown in from one of these science project films to get the young audience. I think if O'Toole and Hemingway had played themselves in this relationship, and the two of them, I think you might have had an interesting picture.
Well, I guess we just like it for different reasons, then, because I like the Stiers character. I thought that he and O'Toole made good foils because they're both equally crazy in different ways. And I also thought that the plot involving Virginia Madsen and Vincent Spano was charming, this whole idea of love, and then she goes into a coma, and can he save her again? Was much more interesting than the Mariel Hemingway-Peter O'Toole relationship, which I thought was totally predictable.
So if you think about it, there isn't a part of this movie that one of the two of us didn't hate.
You got a point. Well, for that matter, there's not a part of this movie that one of the two of us didn't like. Coming up next is the movie.
I guess that's why we're on the show together.
Vanessa Redgrave stars in a film about the loneliness that hangs over a small English town.
Was it your fault?
This film is called Wetherby, and I think it's one of the year's very finest. A story of heartbreaking loneliness as well as a mystery, but it's not done in the souped-up Hollywood manner of, say, an Agnes of God. On the contrary, this film plays as naturally and as unexpectedly as life itself. No jazzy characters, just people who seem rather normal on the surface, but underneath there's a maelstrom of discontent. Vanessa Redgrave stars as a popular English school teacher, a spinster who lives alone and is quite popular with her students.
Right, come on, heads out of the books. Please, everyone, that's not how I teach, as you know.
Mr. Braithwaite said you weren't going to be here today, miss.
Well, then, you have a pleasant surprise. Would, please, Marjorie.
Please, miss, I forgot to hand you the book.
Shut up, sit down, open the window.
Miss, you've still got your fag in your mouth. good.
Now, one night at a party at Redgrave's home, a strange young man appears. Everybody thinks he's with someone else. Suddenly, he launches into a monologue about the British no longer saying what they mean.
I only know goodness and anger and revenge and evil and desire. These seem to me far better words than neurosis and psychology and paranoia. These old words, these good old words have a sort of conviction which all this modern apparatus of language now lacks.
Now, that young man dies unexpectedly in Redgrave's home sometime after the party, and eventually she becomes a suspect in his death.
It's just that Roger, your colleague, Roger says that when you came back, he remembers that you changed.
Changed?
I don't mean, I'm not saying as a person. Your clothes.
Oh, I put on my trousers. I snagged my stocking. Oh, gosh. Who are you? So, how are you managing alone?
Don't you think you should tell me? What happened? Was it your fault?
Now, part of that was flashback as she flashes back to the party sequence led by the questioning of the police detective there. Now, I don't want to give away anything about this story because part of its power does come from its surprises. And I don't have to give anything away because of how beautifully David Hare has directed his original screenplay. This is a tremendous achievement simply as a directing job from a playwright. It's quite an achievement, actually, as Hare gets us to think about, as the Beatles once did, all the lonely people, and where does their loneliness come from? It's made most very clear where the loneliness comes from, and most memorably in Wetherby. A really superb motion picture with another great performance by Vanessa Redgrave.
I agree with you, Gene. I think it's one of the most intelligent and most moving films I've seen in a long time. And the beautiful thing about David Hare's screenplay is that what he does is he does have this tragic event in the middle of the story that we don't want to talk too much about. If this were an American movie, that tragic event would have to be solved, and the movie would be about the solution to it. Here, his insight is that quite frequently in our lives, when something tragic happens around us, it causes us to look at ourselves and to say, well, gee, I really have to think more about the meaning of life because I can see how easily it can end. And in this case, in this film, it flashes all the way back to that Vanessa Redgrave character's childhood and young adolescence. And there's a character played by her daughter, Jolie Richardson, and that's a wonderful performance, too. Her first love affair and how that first affair led through another tragedy to this lonely woman that we see today. It's marvelously subtle.
Well, there's a lot going on, two other things that I'd like to talk about. One of the things is this inability to communicate. He's saying this, he's an English playwright, and of course he's saying it about the English and criticizing the English reserve. And he does this in a film called Plenty. It's also being released around this time. But the way that this is done, it applies cross-culturally. There are tons of people walking around who never say what they really feel. And these people suffer terrible consequences their entire lives. And this film cries out, and it's quite liberating for the tragedy that's involved in this film. I found it quite liberating at the end as an argument for speaking out, for touching someone else, for talking to someone else. It's a beautiful film.
And you know, another marvelous thing about the film, and there are so many good things to talk about, not only does it do these things that we've been talking about, but it does it within such an unforced, unstudied, natural, everyday rhythm in that little village, that village of Wetherby. The people drift in and out, not representing symbols and loaded with all big speeches that they have to give, but simply walking in as themselves and trying to deal as best they can from moment to moment with what's going on.
When I saw this
really wonderful.
When I saw the film, I thought the town actually existed.
Well, it's a good film. Next at the movies, Key Exchange, in which New York yuppies try to decide whether to exchange the keys to their apartments and to their hearts.
There's a physical thing that's happening. I mean, we're chewing each other's faces off.
Exchange, and this is the kind of movie where New Yorkers say it's filled with all sorts of moments of truth, and people from the rest of the country say, what's the matter with those people? I've rarely seen a movie that exists so firmly within the Manhattan lifestyle, at least as publicized in places like New York Magazine, in which finding space to live and a way to get to work are both more important than simple things like love. And getting the right clothes on, that's the most important thing of all. The movie stars Brooke Adams and Ben Masters as a couple who have been dating for a long time, and maybe they're even in love, but should they exchange the keys to their apartments?
Great. So we get keys to each other's apartments. Then you know what happens? I'll tell you what happens. Say one night you're at a party and you meet some guy and you hit it off, right? Or take the reverse situation. Say that I'm at a party and I meet some girl and right away, you know, it's a mutual attraction situation. We have a little chat, a drink maybe. The next thing you know, we're in a cab. There's a physical thing that's happening. I mean, we're chewing each other's faces off. You know, trying to decide where to go, you know? Your place or mine. Only hold the phone here. See, there's no decision to be made here because you've got a key to my place. And I don't know whether you've come by or not. And I can't chance putting either you or he in that awkward situation. So it's off to her place somewhere in the East 80s. We're going to climb over 2 roommates and 3 cats. Put on some boom mattress on the floor. Read a real quiet like this. Sally, my roommate, got a commercial call back at 9:30 in the morning. And this whole time I'm feeling some resentment towards you because you're having a key and then it had to be the cats on the floor and Sally, my roommate, asleep for nothing.
Don't sweet talk me, Philip.
I'm just being honest with you.
I don't know anybody else who talks like that. Meanwhile, Daniel Stern plays a man who's just married a ballerina but finds himself falling in love with Brooke Adams anyway.
She was just beautiful. I went back there every night just to watch her spin around and chant some African tongue. But the way that she moved, the way she took in the whole audience with her eyes, conjured up all this rush of images. And, well, then I got to know her. And, well, the real flesh and blood images took over. You know, you have to say goodbye to all those, you know.
Expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, great expectations.
You're a wonderful man, Michael.
Now, I don't know about you, but to me that dialogue sounds written and read.
Well, you know, this is based on a play.
Based on a play.
And that's what happens when you don't change the dialogue that's based on a play.
You never have the feeling these people are really talking to each other and thinking of the things just as they say.
The nicest thing about that scene was the music, frankly.
Well,
nice
they
song.
should have let it play. Anyway, there are all kinds of questions now still to be answered. Will Brooke Adams end up with Ben Masters or with Daniel Stern in that second scene? Or maybe she'll wind up with Tony Roberts, who plays the host of the TV show that she produces. Will Masters and Stern remain friends even though they love the same woman? Well, they might. After all, they're practicing for the same bicycle race together. This movie spends a lot of time talking about commitment, but the only thing it's committed to is its completely arbitrary plot, which makes these characters fall in and out of love whenever they can think of sufficiently clever dialogue to explain themselves. The real problem with the people in this movie is that none of them really feels anything, and the real problem with the movie is that it doesn't know that.
Oh, and I'll tell you another thing. It cheats all the time. It cuts out of scenes so we don't know who's sleeping with whom, and that's very convenient. At the end of that scene, we think that they've gone to bed together, but we can't really tell. We don't know whether she's been sleeping with the TV talk show host. The TV stuff is really badly edited. There's some very errors in continuity where a show that's supposedly set the daytime appears to be occurring in the afternoon. Beyond that, I never really believed that Brooke Adams really liked the guy we saw on the street. I thought that was a total fiction. I didn't see any attraction between them. Oh, I could see why he liked her for sleeping with, but I didn't see anything that she would like in him. And the second thing, the only character that I thought that was kind of sweet was that guy sitting there, the poor schlemiel guy who believes in an honest marriage. And then we meet his wife, and she's a little drip from, I don't know, a 1960s movie of some idiotic portrayal of women. I mean, so out of 4 characters, I like 1.
Let me get this straight, Gene. In other words, you didn't like the film.
I didn't like the film.
Sounds
I
like
liked that one song.
I sat there and I was really angry, and I was also like you. I finally got to the point, and this is always bad because you can forgive errors in a movie if the movie's working.
Sure.
But you're saying, hey, wait a minute. It appears that she isn't going to work until noon, and the show was on the air at 4 in the afternoon, and the name of the show is Good Morning, New York.
Right.
I mean, somebody must have thought about this picture before they put it together, but it apparently isn't reflected on the screen. I mean, just one mistake after another.
But mistakes in characterization that are so much more important.
Right.
Now to recap our reactions to the films on this show. Both Roger and I were really disappointed in Godzilla in 1985. It should have been a lot of fun. It wasn't. 2 downturned thumbs. And 2 thumbs down on Creator with Peter O'Toole. Roger thought it was a near miss. I liked O'Toole's performance too, but I thought the film was really overstuffed with a lot of pointless characters. We both greatly admired the magnificent British drama Weatherby, one of the year's finest. starring Vanessa Redgrave and written and directed by David Hare. And finally, 2 thumbs down for Key Exchange, the unfunny, unromantic comedy about New York yuppies, as if yuppies didn't have a bad enough name already. This film just drives it one step lower.
So we're very much in agreement
Weatherby.
about Weatherby, and this is a film that probably is going to be playing city by city around the country, but I think it will make it to a lot of cities, because I'll bet you that Vanessa Redgrave has a chance at an Oscar.
She always does.
She gets nominated time after time. This time, she's really done the work, and she deserves it. That's it for this week. Next week at the movies, Meryl Streep and Sting star in Plenty, the story of a woman who has a great World War II, but then it's all downhill. And Glenn Close and Manny Patinkin are in Maxie, a modern-day ghost story. That's next week, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.